The rank of this category of professional people depends upon the uncompromising question that determines the whole value of their personalities, namely whether they strive for their own betterment or for the realization of an objective goal. Wherever acquisitive activity basically has no other motive than acquisition itself, such a criterion does not exist and may be replaced only through the alternative of ruthless egotism and a reasonable fair-mindedness, though here it would have a basically prohibitive effect. Curiously enough, money, although or rather because it is the most sublimated economic value, may release us from economic bondage, though only, it is true, at the price of confronting us with that relentless question of those activities whose meaning does not lie in economic success. Just as the differentiation of life at a higher stage of development produces new units that form new syntheses, so we already see here that the monetary alienation of possession and the core of the personality provide a new significance for each other. For the practical content of the activity of the artist, the official, the preacher, the teacher and the scholar is measured against an objective ideal and gives subjective satisfaction to the performer according to these standards. But then there is also the economic success of these activities, which as we know is not always a constant function of their objective and ideal success. Not only can the economic success of these activities be pushed by the lowest dispositions so much into the foreground that it relegates the objective ideals merely to a means, but also, for more sensitive and idealistic people, the material success of the performance may be a consolation, a substitute, a salvation for the insufficiency that is felt with regard to the primary goal. At the very least, it will be something like a respite and a momentary shift of interest which will finally channel new strength into the main objective. Much more difficult and dangerous is the lot of those who do not make any money with their activities, but can only evaluate them objectively and in accordance with their inner demands. They lack the beneficial diversion and consolation of the thought that they have, at least in the economic sense, held their own and have received acknowledgement for it. They feel themselves confronted with an all-or-nothing ideal and have to adjust to a law that recognizes no extenuating circumstances. Such is the compensation for the advantage of those who are envied because money is of no concern to them and who can devote themselves to a cause. They have to pay for this advantage by the fact that the value of their action is determined by only one type of success. If their action fails, they do not have the comfort, however small, that they at least accomplished a tangible secondary success. Since this success is embodied in the form of money earned, it thereby greatly facilitates the gaining of such importance. First, it demonstrates in the unambiguous manner the fact that the achievement, in spite of falling short of its own or the objective final value, must still be of value to other people. Furthermore, the structure of money is particularly well suited to operating as a relatively satisfactory substitute for an absent ideal major success because, by virtue of its tangibility and its quantitative determination, it provides a certain support and psychological release from the oscillations and fluctuations of qualitative life values, particularly where these are still in a state of being conquered. Finally, the complete inner estrangement of money from ideal values prevents an entanglement of the sense of values which would be extremely disquieting to sensitive people. Both consequences remain completely separate, the one may sometimes gain a certain inner importance when the other fails, but they do not mix with one another. Money thus succeeds after having made the purely intellectual professions possible through the separation of having and being in supporting, through a new synthesis of what is differentiated, the production of purely intellectual values, not only, as it were, on an absolute, but also on a relative level, precisely where one is not yet accustomed to the indeterminacy of that decision. Lack of freedom as the interweaving of the mental series. It is precisely through this fundamental separation that the money economy contributes towards the realization of a concept of freedom that is worthy of consideration. Man's lack of freedom is characterized only superficially by the fact that he is dependent upon external powers. This external dependency has its counterpart in those internal relations that intertwine our interests and our actions so closely with other people's that their independent movement and development is hindered. The external lack of freedom often extends to the inner personality. It gives to one psychic realm or energy an unwarranted emphasis such that it interferes with the development of other abilities and cripples their own autonomy. Of course, this constellation may have other causes than that of external dependence. If moral philosophy seeks to define moral freedom as the independence of reason from sensual egotistic impulses, then this is just a one-sided instance of the whole general ideal of freedom that exists in the specific evolution, the independent living to the full, of a single energy of the soul in relation to all others. Sensuality, too, is free if it is no longer bound up in the norms of reason, that is, no longer restrained by them. Thought is free when it only follows its own inner motives and has detached itself from its involvement with emotions and volitions that influence it in a direction that is alien to it. Thus, one may define freedom as an internal division of labor, as a mutual detachment and differentiation of impulses, interests, and capacities. That man is a free person whose various individual energies develop and are alive exclusively for their own purposes and norms. This includes freedom in the ordinary sense of independence from external forces. When closely analyzed, the lack of freedom that we endure means nothing other than that the inner strength to combat it, the realm of the soul committed to an imposed purpose, involves other energies and interests which would otherwise, unless it hindered us in other activities or enjoyments, we would never view an imposed privation as lack of freedom unless it distorted or suppressed other not be taken up. We would not view work imposed upon us as lack of freedom normal or desired sensual energies. The old saying that freedom means living according to one's own nature is nothing but the concise and abstract expression for what is meant here in a specific concrete sense. Since man consists of a variety of qualities, strengths and impulses, so freedom signifies the independence and evolution of each one of them according to their own laws of life. The avoidance of the mutual influence of the individual psychic sequences can never be complete. Its limit lies in the actual and indispensable psychic connections by which man, with all the diversity of his being and action, ultimately appears as a relative unity. The complete differentiation or freedom of an inner series is an inconceivable concept. The form that may be attained in this respect is that the entanglements and bonds affect increasingly fewer individual points of the series. Wherever one series is unavoidably connected with another psychic sphere, it will achieve its most independent formation if it is bound up with this sphere only generally, but not specifically with each of its elements. Whereas, for example, intelligence is closely connected with the will in such a way that its greatest depths and achievements depend upon the energetic vitality of the latter, thinking will deviate from its own norms and from the independence of its inner consistency as soon as the will that drives it possesses a specific coloring, a special content. Intelligence definitely requires fusing with general life energy. However, the more it coalesces with specific forms of that energy, for example, religious, political, sensual, etc., the more it is in danger of being unable to develop its own independent direction. Thus, artistic production at the levels of particular refinement and spirituality depends on a higher degree of intellectual training, but it will be able to profit by that development, or even to bear it, only if the training is not too specialized but rather unfolds its range and its depth only in more general fields of knowledge. Otherwise, the independence and purely artistic motivation of production experiences distortions and constraints. For instance, the feeling of love may have the most intimate knowledge of the beloved person as a cause or as an effect or simply as an accompanying phenomenon. Yet the enhancement of the emotions to their limits and their capacity to remain there will easily be handicapped if consciousness is focused one-sidedly on some particular quality of the other person. Rather, only if the overall picture of the beloved determines the consciousness of them, and thereby offsets every specific and one-sided quality they possess, does it become a basis on which the feeling of love can unfold its strength and sincerity undisturbed, and can follow its own impulse. The unavoidable coalescence of psychic energies impedes the free development of the particular energies if they are connected not with a specialized side or stage of development of the other, but rather with its general character. Only in this fashion can the distance be established that enables each of them to develop on their own.